Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tar Heel Illustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for another episode of our UNC Basketball ISO Series. And as you guys can tell by the title, which I'm sure is the reason you clicked on it, we're here to talk about Brady Manek in this edition of our ISO series. But before we dive into that, AJ, make sure you guys head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Link is in the description below. Sign up to be a premium member for just $8.33 a month. So much of what we do, you have to be signed up as a premium member to see. That includes access to our premium message boards, which is a big spot to get a lot of information on recruiting and whatnot going on behind the scenes. So if you're interested in that, you want to get a little bit more access to what we got going on, at TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can sign up for just $8.33 a month. And as I like to say, it's a great time to do it with all the recruiting stuff going on and ahead of the start of fall camp in just a few weeks now. So take advantage of that $8.33 a month, link in the description below. But AJ, let's dive into Brady Manek real quick and talk about him. Obviously a guy that transferred from Oklahoma, played 4 seasons for the Sooners before deciding to transfer to North Carolina this season. Was a big pickup for Hubert Davis and the staff when he came in. And I think as a player, like we'll get into, that is expected to have a big impact on next year's team. But real quickly, I'm going to run through some of his stats. Averaged 10.8 points last season for the Sooners, 0.8 assists and 5 rebounds per game. Was actually his lowest points total going back to his freshman year in 2017, 2018, when he averaged 10.2 points. So a little bit of a drop-off in terms of points production, but he also played a little bit less minutes for Oklahoma last year, which I'm sure aided in that a little bit. Now, that's very surface-level thinking and looking at Brady Manek, and that obviously doesn't tell the whole story of just the kind of player he is. But when you look at a guy like Manek, 6'9", a guy that can step out, also go down low a little bit, but he's a guy that likes to shoot threes. He's a guy that likes to step out and show his range, which I think from what we understand and what Hubert's trying to build at North Carolina is a very key component and a guy that they really need and look for as somebody who can really stretch the floor, which is something Hubert's really trying to do. So, AJ, I guess before we dive into it, kind of like we always do, what are your kind of initial thoughts from what you've seen, from what you've looked at, from the video and highlights you've watched on Brady Manek? What are your initial thoughts on the kind of player he is and can be for the Tar Heels?
Well, Hubert Davis in North Carolina added the 14th all-time leading scorer in Oklahoma history.
It's pretty good.
Now, Oklahoma's got some pretty good basketball history. I've seen the Sooners in a regional final in 2009. I've seen them in the Final Four in 2016. They've been to 5 or 6 Final Fours in their history. If you know about college basketball in the 80s, for example, then you know Oklahoma. You know Wayman Tisdale. You know Mookie Blaylock. They played for the title in 1988. There's basketball history there, and there are a lot of really good players in its history. And Brady Manek is the 14th all-time leading scorer, so that's number 1. So you're talking about a club that was the 325th most experienced team in college basketball a year ago, and they just added a guy who started 111 times for Lon Kruger, who's a good friend of Roy Williams. So he's been there, done that. He's lit up. He played really well in his career against Oklahoma State, which is an intense rivalry. It's a big rivalry in basketball. And I'll tell you right now, when OU rolls into Stillwater, that's an environment. And Brady Manek did pretty well in that environment. He lit up Kansas a couple of times, led OU to a win over Kansas a couple of years ago where he literally carried the Sooners right out of the gate. They built a big lead that they never let up. He buried Kansas early in that game. That also happened to be a day that they ended Kansas's run of Big 12 titles as well. So he has explosive ability. If you go back and trace some of his better games, which I've done, and you can read on our site, TarHeelIllustrated.com, earlier this week when I did the look at, because it's Brady Manek week, I look at headpiece, and then as I've done for everybody else, their 5 best games, and I went through and I tracked every basket he scored. And what was really amazing is he would have barrages of 8, 9 minutes where he'd score 17, 18, 19 points in big games. Now, he's not hitting a bucket every 5 minutes and getting 20 that way. It's barrage stuff. It's put the team on your shoulders, carry them for a stretch, And usually it was either pulling away from a team either early or late or coming back against a team. So when you have a guy that can catch the ball, he's got the quickest catch and release that I saw in college basketball the last couple of years, who's 6'9", shoots over people. His shots are not contested. And he's got the ability not just to fill it up there, but he can move. And a lot of other baskets he scored had assists attached to him. So he knows how to move. He knows how to make himself available to teammates. And they were often finding him in those situations. Hubert is adding a guy that can literally hoist the team on his shoulders for stretches in big environments against the best opponents that they're going to play and give them something. Conversely, though, there were times, especially last year, where he didn't produce a lot. Now, part of it, Jacob, was he played the 5 some, and he was playing a little bit out of position. And they had some other guys that stepped up and were scoring as well. So there were times where maybe he just didn't mesh as well, from what I'm able to tell by people I've talked to who covered him, going back and going over every game he played last year, because I have not seen him in person. It's really weird. We're talking about an experienced guy that I haven't seen in person, but that's the way college basketball is these days. So Carolina's getting someone that can help. They're getting someone that can hit threes, and it's catch and shoot stuff. If you love catch and shoot threes, you're going to love Brady Manek if you haven't seen it. If you haven't watched him, Google some of his video clips. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I love the catch. I mean, he's ready to shoot when he gets the ball. And you got to love a guy like that. So when you envision the way Carolina's going to play more this coming season as opposed to last year, you had to have a guy like Brady Manek. And when he popped for Hubert back in was it late April, I guess it was, he was the best pickup Carolina could have gotten from the portal. I think that they've exceeded that with another guy here recently. And the fact they added those two will make them, I think, very formidable. But Brady Manek was a great, great get for Hubert and the Tar Heels.
Yeah, agreed. You mentioned a couple of those big games last year in particular that he put up some points. Looking back at it, first round of the NCAA tournament, win over Missouri, had 19 points in that one, 5 for 9 from three-point land, 6 for 13 from the floor. And then a couple weeks before that against Oklahoma State, at Oklahoma State, I think you mentioned that as well, 20 points in that game, 50% from the floor, 44% from three. So, there's a lot more games if you go look at his game log where he had big ones, especially if you keep going back throughout the years. But those are just a couple examples of what he can do in big time environments, and kind of just shows the type of player he is. Like you talked about, a guy that doesn't seem scared of the moment. And you have to be like that when you're coming into a program and playing for a program like North Carolina, because, everybody wants to beat you on every given night. Every game's a big game. So you have to be somebody who can handle that and do that. And I think Brady Manek, from what you can tell and from what we've seen at Oklahoma, seems like a guy who's more than capable of doing that.
Well, to that, let me add this. 42 times as a Sooner, he scored 15 or more points.
Wow.
22 times, he scored 18 or more points. 12 times, he did 20 or more, and he was 30 plus twice. He had 31, I think was his career high at TCU. I think his 30 he scored against Oklahoma State, I believe. And then last year, he only scored double figures in half their games last year. However, in 3 of their last 6 games, he was at 19 or more points. So, look, they whatever the issue was a year ago is not going to be an issue for him now because he's out of that situation. He's at Carolina. They have an absolute need. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting. How good could a team be to have the 14th all-time leading scorer at Oklahoma, the guy who started 111 games at Oklahoma, maybe be your 6th man?
Yeah.
But that could be what Carolina's looking at with the addition of Dawson Garcia. I do think that he and Dawson Garcia and and Armando Bacot can coexist out there. I think there are plenty of minutes to keep those guys happy, regardless of whoever starts. We know Armando's going to start, and maybe Garcia comes off the bench. Who knows? Because he could play the 5, he could play the 4. He's going to stretch stuff too. Manek is much more of an outside perimeter guy than Garcia is. If you go back and look at Garcia's production last year, in his big games that he had, I did a thing that we're running next week when it's Dawson Garcia week. The 5 best games he had a year ago, only one of them he had more than 1 3, and that was 2 in a game. Manek's big games are more barrages of threes, and he'll mix in some cuts to the lane, working on the block to get the entry pass. He'll turn and score, that kind of thing. But his big games all began on the perimeter. So they're very different players. They can coexist out there. But there might be nights where Brady Manek doesn't do a whole lot. It might be the kind of team you're going up against where the need is a lot more Garcia, a lean toward Garcia. So Manek maybe doesn't play as much. He doesn't get opportunities to produce as much. But there are going to be games, Jacob, where they're going to need Manek to line it up. And he's proven in 4 years, even his freshman year at Oklahoma, he had a game, he played 23 minutes and scored 28 points as a freshman. And I think it was 19 of those points came in a 9-minute stretch late in the game where he lifted them to a win. So he's got the ability to do that. And I think Carolina fans, when they envision Brady Manek moving forward, they're going to see some different scoring numbers from night to night. But the nights that they need him to score, he'll have the ability, and he will have already proven that he can step up and carry the load. And that's important because there were times last year where they didn't have anybody carry the load in stretches, and they would not score for a long period of time. And the guards had trouble creating stuff. We know what all the problems were. When you have a dude out there that can get a pass from R.J. Davis or from Leaky Black or from Caleb Love, and he can catch square and shoot immediately and make it, that changes so much in your offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things, there's a couple of videos that Carolina's released over the past 2 weeks, Carolina basketball, inside practice, and I think it was the first summer practice they had where Hebert was talking, and one of the biggest things he was talking about was how they wanted to space the floor out and open up things. And we talked a lot about this last year, looking at last year's team when Caleb Love struggled. If you go watch, his high school tape, he was a guy that liked to get to the lane, and I think the way Carolina played last year with some of the pieces they had, the lane was so clogged up at times that, Caleb Love wasn't able to go down there and do what he was normally doing. We had to deal with a lot more contact and just a lot less room down there. I think the addition of Manek alone, not alone because they've added some other pieces, but the addition of Manek in particular fixes that problem already because you got a guy who's 6'9" that can step out and shoot. And that's what he wants to do. It's not like he wants to go post up.
You're 100% right. Think about what Roy said about Buddy Boeheim, and also after the Iowa game. Mm-hmm. You and I talked about it when we did the video when I was in Iowa last year. Roy said it's not contesting their threes; it's keeping them from getting the ball to take the threes. They did that. Leaky did that with Buddy Boeheim in the second half of the home game against Syracuse. Shut him down, not because Buddy Boeheim missed a bunch of shots because Leaky was challenging him. He didn't get the shots.
Yeah.
So teams as I was saying a minute ago, Manek, if he gets the ball, he's going to release it. It's not going to be contested because he's got the quickest release I saw of anybody in the nation last year. The only way you keep him from going off is to keep him from getting the ball. So if he's the 4 on offense and you're Caleb Love or RJ and you come up the court and Manek is out here in the right wing, the defender has to be out there with him because the objective is to keep him from getting the ball. Because once he gets it, then you're at the mercy of whether or not the ball goes to the basket. Okay. So that right there opens up the lane for Carolina. It's not like Manek's just going to be down the block and then drags his guy out there. He's going to do some of that. I know he's working on a lot of post stuff. In fact, on our look ahead piece, the reason I used a photograph of him on the lower block with Sean May defending him is because that's one of the things that they're working on. But Caleb comes up the court, Manek's going to be out there. That means his defender's going to be out there. There's going to be more room in the lane. He's going to make other guys better, especially those young guards who struggled last year, as you said. He's going to make them better just by being on the court because it's going to open things up more, even if he doesn't get a touch.
Yeah, exactly. So overall, before we wrap it up, Manek, in your opinion, because I think we're on the same page on this, good addition because of his experience and because he fills a need that Carolina needs in terms of a big who can stretch the floor. Is that kind of the synopsis on it?
Absolutely. He's an experienced guy. He's played. Look, they have 3 guys on this team that have played on the road in front of packed houses.
That's a good point.
Brady Manek, Armando Bacot, and Leaky Black. And Manek's done it more than anybody else. Manek's gone into Allen Fieldhouse. He's gone into Stillwater. He's gone to those kind of places, and he's played well.
Tough environment.
Okay? He's played in NCAA tournament games. He's played for an excellent coach in Lon Kruger, who teaches the game. He's been on winning teams. He's been in the NCAA tournament, all that kind of stuff. So Manek has been there, done that guy. And I think what's important is that he understood coming to Chapel Hill. He's not going there to be the man. He's going there to be a part of something. Mm-hmm. So if he has the 20-point game followed by a 4-point game, I think he'll take it straight. I think he'll know how to handle it. I don't think Hubert's got to worry about how Brady Manek approaches a season and deals with the ebbs and flows of a season. He's a guy that can speak a lot of wisdom in that room because from a playing in front of people standpoint, because what last year was, he's a valuable voice in that locker room because Caleb and RJ and those guys, they didn't do it. The biggest crowd they played in front of last year was either the NCAA tournament game against Wisconsin, and I was there. It was mostly Wisconsin people there, or at Florida State. I was at that game too, and there were only about 3,000 people in the building. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there was really nobody anywhere. So there's a lot of newness. That's why that early game at Charleston is really beneficial to this group, because they're going to get that taste on the road. And that might be a night where Brady hits, 3 or 4 threes in a 5-minute span, and boom, kind of give them that little ignition and they take off. Exactly. And I think that would be cool if that's the case, because they'll see what he can do early on. And I think they'll lean on him in a situation like that, because they're going to have to learn how to navigate through this stuff. And he's going to play a big part in showing them how.
Agreed. Yeah. I think, you've seen it with some guys in the past who maybe have transferred in coming from lower schools or schools that, smaller than Oklahoma, who adjust the pressure just a little bit too much and playing at that level. I don't think that'll be an issue for Brady Manek when you look what he's done at Oklahoma and just the size of that program, like you mentioned. So, yeah, I think Manek's a big-time addition to this team. I like what he brings from three-point land. I like how his ability to stretch the floor, and from what he was trying to do, I think that's just somebody that they have to have on that roster, and he definitely fits that role. So, yeah, Brady Manek, I think he's a big-time pickup for the Tar Heels, and we'll see what kind of year he has. Jury's obviously still out on that, but if you look at it on paper and watch his tape, you can easily see why he and the staff were so excited and so willing to get him. So that'll do it for this episode of our UNC Basketball ISO Series, the Brady Manek edition. If you haven't seen the other ones we're doing and the football ISO videos we've been running out all offseason, we've been running out a ton. If you click on our channel below, you'll find a playlist on the front. You can go check all those out. But I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. You guys know what to do as always. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell as well, so you know every single time we upload. We do it a lot. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.